My name is Carlie Summers. I'm 60 years old. My pronouns are she and her, and I came out at the age of 56, and I live in Guelph. Standing behind me is Bones. She's been with me since 2011. Bones is not a prop for Halloween. She is my goth girl. So she dresses in my goth outfit for the year, and then on Hallows Eve, we switch. She gets a different outfit. I get to wear the one she has on. I am the queen for the night, and then she gets her outfit back. She's been a part of my life for a long time, and the coffin itself represents for me the day I decided I needed to die and the day that I decided to live. So I was born in 1961. I was born in a small Air Force base, 765 kilometers north of Thunder Bay. It is no longer there. Well, I shouldn't say that. It is still there, but it's mostly dilapidated buildings. My father, he was an Irishman. He was there to work at the base, and my mother was a mix of Iroquois Indian and Abitibi. They abandoned me at 3 years old, and my story starts from there. I was a ward of the Children's Aid Society until the age of 7. And then after that, I started a life on a farm. At the age of 7, I knew that I was in the wrong body, or that there was something wrong with where I was. Couldn't put my finger on it. I decided that I was the problem, and I couldn't talk to anybody about it. Living on the farm, the farm 3 farms over, was a kid named Toddy, and he actually was the one who said to me that I was weird. I acted strange, or I didn't act like a normal boy. He was always in the pile, doing the stuff, lugging the farm stuff around, as where I wanted to play with his sister and be upstairs trying on some of her clothes. So I was a little weird growing up at that time. By the age of 10, I knew I was in the wrong body. I hated the body I was in. It was too muscular, too manly, too boyish. I wanted the opposite. I wanted to be feminine. I wanted to be girly. And again, there was absolutely no one to talk to about it. When I became 14, we had moved to Toronto. Toronto was a vast place, a place where kids were cruel. They were absolutely cruel. I couldn't be who I wanted to be. I couldn't come out to say who I wanted to be. So I dropped out of school. I got a job at a roofing company, and I moved to a rooming house. Still living there, I was able to be myself in my room, but I couldn't be myself anywhere else. The 70s for me was a time when I was turning after 10 and before I was going to be a 16-year-old. It was a very difficult time because my body was changing, hair was coming in places I didn't want it to come in, and I had no one to talk to. The 80s was my time. That was where I found the underground. The underground, as much as it sounds seedy and total bad, it wasn't. It was a place that people could go to be themselves and not get harassed. Yes, there were people that did make it into the underground that wanted to be harassers, and they were usually found out pretty quick and ousted. Most people who were transgender during the 80s were more or less called transvestites. They were taken that a transvestite was a person who had male and female genitalia. They were usually sex workers. They were lost souls. And the only reason we were lost souls back then is because no one would accept us. Transgender people were less accepted back in the 80s than a gay person or a lesbian. The community that was underground accepted everybody. Yes, there was a lot of dark places in the underground, and yes, there was a lot of sexual activity that probably today would be looked at as very seedy. Once the 90s came and into the 2000s, all of a sudden, the underground started disappearing. Not as much, I mean, it's still out there, but it started disappearing because people were more accepted above ground. The communities all of a sudden would accept a transgender in the 2000s for work. In the 90s, never. You had to be very careful in the 90s. And in the 2000s, sure, you still have to be careful. Not everybody's accepting, but we're accepted a lot more now than we were then. And that just shows how much our society is changing. So talking with some of the underground people, we didn't have internet back then. We didn't have anything like that to go on. But when you start putting out word of mouth, the underground was a place to go. Even at 14, 15 years old, they accepted you. You could do whatever you wanted. You could dress like her, you could be her, you could be anybody you wanted to be. So the underground was where I decided that it was going to be my playground until I was the age of 16. At 16, I met a very, very nice boy. He was 19. Eric and I got along fabulously, and we became lovers. He treated me feminine. I was sort of what we would be classified as the femme part of our relationship, and that's how he treated me. And it was absolutely fabulous. I got to be me whenever we were indoors. I couldn't be me outdoors. Outdoors in Toronto at that time, it was not a place to be. Underground, absolutely, everybody was there. So for 3 years, Eric, he would take me to Montreal and back. The underground in Montreal was a fabulous place. They accepted everybody in Montreal. It was a very, very different place than Toronto. And back in Toronto, we maintained living together, but we had to have 2 separate bedrooms. If our friends came over, it always looked like Eric had his room, I had my room, we were roommates. And that was because being gay back then just was not accepted. As we moved it upwards from the 80s, it was more accepted to be gay than to be trans. I knew I was trans. I knew I wanted to be a female. I knew who I was, but I couldn't be her. So gay was as close as I was going to get. In the late 80s, I met a woman. She was in her 30s. I was touching 30. And we decided that it didn't have to be love to have marriage. I wanted children, she wanted children. And as long as I stayed myself indoors and brought our kids up as a mom inside and dad outside, we could have a relationship. So we married in 1990, and I got to be Carlie indoors and Carl outdoors. My kids knew me as mom inside and pop outside. And they actually thought it was quite cool to have both. As time went on, the need for Carlie to be outside became very, very strong. People were starting to accept transgenders, not in a fabulous way, but they were being more open to accepting. By the early 2000s, the urge for me to get out became so strong that I started doing drag. My excuse for drag for my family was raising money for cancer, which I did. And it was a great gig. So I got to be a female on the evenings and raise money for a worthy cause. So that urge to be out was sort of appeased because at least 3 times a week I got to be her. When my neighbors found out that I did drag, it became a little better for me that I could say, hey, I could start wearing a few female things outside the house because they would think I'm just practicing. That, however, got squashed by my wife because she said that was a no-no. We had agreed to I would not be outside. In 2007, I took a job up north and I was building a cabin for a man. And it seemed a worthy road that he lived on to commit suicide. I figured if I could go into the bar, get drunk, attempt to drive home back to where the site was, I would definitely fly from the road and into the jungle that was down below. So I went to the Legion in town and I drank until they closed. They let me leave. Apparently I didn't look drunk enough to say you had to leave your keys. So I left. And the next thing I knew, I was awake in a hospital. It was almost a week later. I was pronounced dead on arrival at the Sudbury Hospital. And the cardiologist there brought me back to life. I was still in the same body and I was still the same person. And I didn't understand. My beliefs were if you died, you get to come back in a different vessel. My vessel did not change. I was very depressed. So between 2007 and 2009, I went to AA, I did a rehab, and technically they could have kept me locked up because of a suicide attempt, but I did so well at the program that I got to leave. After that, I ended up putting on a lot of weight. And in 2011, I was headed for my next suicide, but that was going to be from fat. I was ready for a heart attack. My cholesterol was through the roof. I was 165 pounds overweight. And my doctor said, if you continue this route, you are going to die. I kept from saying to her, yes, that is the idea. So they have all kinds of pills that you can take. You can get pills for cholesterol, you can get it for your diabetes, you can get it for your stomach. And I went, no, I don't want to do this. I would rather lose the weight. So I started doing drag again. And once I was on stage, once I started sweating, once I started moving, the weight started to come off. I joined a gym, and in 2011, I had dropped myself to just over 165 pounds as opposed to being 265 pounds. And I became a personal trainer at a Good Life gym. I've just retired this year. It was a long time. I found health and I found a different avenue of releasing. In 2016, my brother-in-law was diagnosed with lung cancer from asbestos, and it was a very hard hit. He was my favorite. He knew of me, how I grew up, what my problems were. He was gay, the family didn't know. I knew he was gay from the minute we met at the wedding. So we hung together for the last 3 years of his life. And during that time, he had made me promise him that once he was dead and they were having the celebration of life for him, I would come down as Carlie, not as Carl. The joke was, Victor, you're dead tomorrow. I don't understand how this affects you, but it's going to affect the family. And he said, you've punished yourself for 50 years. Stop. You need to do this. So on his celebration of life, I set everything up. I did all the cooking and the catering. And I said to my wife, I'm going to get changed before everybody arrives. And she was like, whatever. So I came down the stairs and I was in a summer dress with a hat. And I announced that Carlie Summers was in the house and I was pleased to meet your acquaintance. There was a bit of laughter. There was a bit of astonishment. There was a lot of family from their side that basically cleared the side of the room. And then there was some of the people who thought I was there to do a drag show, because a lot of them knew I did drag. I think it went well. At the end of the afternoon, the last person of our family left, and my wife told me to leave also. 30 years of marriage, which 15 of were not really a marriage because we were more roommates than we were anything else. We call it quits. And that was 4 years ago, and I've never looked back. This has been the best 4 years of my entire life. I wished I had done it sooner. I wished I'd had more strength in myself to come out earlier. However, the issues were always, will I be alone? Do I have to do this myself? Will I regret? The only regret I have is not coming out earlier. I don't have regrets of the life I've lived. As a man, I did a lot of things a woman would not have been able to do in the era I came through. I've been a rodeo person. I've done morgue work. I've dug graves. I've worked with a vet to castrate cattle. And those were jobs that a woman would not have taken on back during the 80s. Do I regret my life? Not really. Do I regret not coming out earlier? Absolutely. When I came out, I was 60, and I didn't know what I was going to do. I got a job. They offered it to me from the University of Guelph. I work with animals. It's a wonderful job. And at the same time, I ended up meeting my girlfriend, who is current. Her name is Lee. She has total support of me. She understands everything that I've gone through and everything that I'm going through. She does not refer to me as trans. She refers to me as her and as Carlie and as her girlfriend, which is amazing. I was not expecting at 60 years old to find somebody. I was more or less looking for a dog as a companion. And we met by chance on Facebook. She liked a couple of posts that I put on, and I asked her to DM me, and we've been together ever since. She is my life cycle. If I'm ever having an issue, she knows how to set it straight with me, which has been fantastic. So when I decided that it was time for Carlie to come to surface, I was working at Good Life Gym. The moment I told my supervisor that I was changing from him to her, I'm no longer this name, I'm this name, she automatically shook my hand, gave me a hug, and changed my name tag. It was within minutes, an email was sent out congratulating me and asking anyone that was on our staff if there was any issues to come see her. I would never have done that 10 years before that. There was no way. However, if you're going to do it, you need to do it. And the acceptance now is amazing. When I did a Zoom meeting with the university to get the job, and the question never arose, obviously. Could they tell I was a transgender? Most likely. But that was not a question, nor did it have anything to do with the equation of getting hired. They hired me for myself. They hired me for who I am, and they hired me for what I can do. I have been working at the university now, well, it'll be a year in March. I have never been once questioned or harassed. The people at the university have been an absolute gem. So I look at things now that if I had done this 10 years ago, I may not have been able to transgender the way I transgendered. But when I look forward, I see more acceptance. I see opportunities that are not hindered by whether you're a transgender male, transgender female, a cis female, cis male. It makes no difference to anybody anymore. As long as you can do the job that you are applying for, they do not take the other side of you into equation. When I watch some of the other girls on the trans project, if they're anywhere near the ages, the eras are the same. We have all gone through the hate, right? As where when you get into the ones who are younger, they're so much luckier. Being able to tell their parents, or, I mean, I didn't have parents to tell, but if you had a family and you wanted to discuss it, they're discussing it. They're not dismissing it. It's an amazing thing now. Now that the 2000s have arrived for me, the 2000s were a time when my children were born. And I always said that no matter what, they would always be able to talk to me. And I think the mindset between 2000 and 2010 was in that direction. A lot of the kids that grew up in the 2000s, now that we're in the 2020s, there's so much networking out there, so much in our community, so many people that you can talk with. Parents now are more understanding than they were when I was young. When you know that you're in the wrong body or you're in the wrong place, you need to talk with your parents. Parents are very understanding nowadays. They have a lot more insight, and they also look forward. They're not looking what their ancestors were. The LGBTQ community is thriving, especially here in Guelph. The community stands behind and stands with anyone. If you're having any kind of issues, if you have any kind of doubts, if you have questions, there's a wonderful clinic here called Arch. They have a fabulous counsel system. When I look at my kids now, they're both in their 30s. They can still ask me questions, they can still talk to me, and we're very open. The way the system is nowadays is 100% what it was during the 70s and 80s. It's getting better, it still has flaws, but everybody has the opportunity to be themselves.